Some examples include the RNC, the Republican Attorney Generals Association, and Trump political groups. They're very mad that Jimmy Kimmel got fired. Oh, yeah, because the market doesn't want to hear his garbage anymore. That's what the courts are for. If one party is filing overly litigious lawsuits, the courts manage that. You don't need the FBI to go investigate that. That's not a crime to file a bad lawsuit. No, you're not coming in. You have a warrant? Peter says. No? Okay, go. It's like perfect interaction. They said that was combative. They went back to their car, both those agents, like, can you believe he treated us like that? You know we're FBI agents. He should show some respect. Charlie Kirk, Turning Point, and many other Americans on the right side of the aisle back during the Biden administration were under attack. They were being targeted. We've now got the documents that reveal a very extensive spreadsheet showing just what the FBI was up to. We're going to go through it because you'll see here, Turning Point USA listed right there in a list with a bunch of other entities. Of course, Sidney Powell got investigated. Brad Parscale, you remember him, who was Trump's election guru for the first election, and many others. All these people targeted. We'll come back to it, but it shows that the weaponization occurred at a massive scale, and we're just learning about it courtesy of Chuck Grassley. And so Chuck Grassley earlier this week, he came out and he gave us a little bit of a speech, went on for about 10 minutes, but he said, all right, look, Director Patel, I know you're in here today, and we've got a lot of work that you need to do here. Yeah, you've done some good stuff, okay? Big numbers, 23,000 violent criminals, okay? Now, the teamwork has resulted in the arrest and the removal of a bunch of people, and you're even going after MS-13 and more. But, Chuck Grassley said, I want to come back to this Arctic Frost case. That was the FBI case that was opened and approved by the anti-Trump agent called Agent Theobald, Timothy Thibault. The Arctic Frost case that was opened up by the FBI became Jack Smith's case. Handed him the case file. And Jack Smith was supposed to be a special counsel, even though he's not even legitimate, not even a real boy, even though he wanted to be. He's not a real boy, and he's never going to be a real boy, Jack. So he loses, and before he even got the case, it was all handed to him. He was supposed to come in and do his own investigation and be separate and apart, so it's unbiased and nonpartisan. They just gave him the case file. It was rigged. So the case, of course, these new records show that this investigation, according to Grassley, that he's releasing for us today, was much broader than just an electoral matter, okay? The case was expanded to Republican organizations. Some examples include the RNC, the Republican Attorney Generals Association, and Trump political groups. They're very mad that Jimmy Kimmel got fired. Oh, yeah, because the market doesn't want to hear his garbage anymore. Nothing else. Some pressure from the FCC is where they're going to hang their hat on this one. Disney can fight back on that if they really wanted to. If it was worth saving this dude, Disney could say, you can't take our license for content, not neutral content. We need to defend ourselves and stand behind Jimmy Kimmel. But of course, they're not going to do that. So in total, Chuck Grassley is going to explain to us there were 92 Republican targets who were placed under the scope of this investigation by the corrupt FBI. On that list, Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk. In other words, this wasn't just a case to politically investigate Trump. It was the vehicle by which partisan FBI agents and DOJ prosecutors could achieve their partisan ends and improperly investigate the entire Republican political apparatus. Now, we know that this was already going on. We were here. We're on the receiving end. Like, oh, all these lawyers are getting indicted over here. All these lawyers are getting indicted over here. Oh, all the J6ers, even the people who were tapped on the shoulder and invited into the Capitol, are now all being charged with trespass and parading in the Capitol. And they were manufacturing new charges about obstruction of documents that nobody ever saw before. They weaponized the whole government. So we saw the receiving end of it, but we haven't seen the spreadsheets yet. It's interesting. That's how they organized it. But it was a vehicle by which they could attack everybody. And so today, Senator Johnson, shout out, and I are making these records public for everybody to see. Now, we also have Navarro. Okay, so Navarro was also, there was some new information that came out on Navarro as well. But let's just get a little flavor of Chuck Grassley. This is what he sounded like when he was going through and announcing a lot of this.
The case was expanded to Republican organizations. Some examples of the group that Ray FBI sought to place under political investigation included the Republican National Committee, Republican Attorney Generals Association, and various Trump political groups. In total, 92 Republican targets, including Republican groups and Republican-linked individuals, were placed under investigative scope of Arctic Frost.
Crazy. So they were going after everybody. It wasn't about just enforcing the law. It was a political attack on an entire party. They wanted to sideline and remove Trump from the equation, and this was their pretext to do it. They just made it up. And it follows the same pattern. They also indicted him 4 times. crimes. The president, they tried to remove him off the ballot. They tried to bankrupt him. They tried to sue him civilly and call him a sexual assaulter. I mean, they went full tilt to stop him. And now we're seeing it wasn't just him, and they were going after and trying to come up with reasons for anybody. And so here is the full document. Now you can see unclassified memo, courtesy of the FBI. This was dated back on January 23rd, 2023. Okay, so Biden is still in charge. They're going hog wild. They really need to ramp this stuff up because Trump's going to run again. And they're freaked because they got an invalid up there and a number 2 in Kamala. Like, oh gosh, this is going to be bad. So here's the summary, courtesy of the FBI. They say, investigation into the multifaceted conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election, which is also, I think a misnomer because we were trying to have a debate about the legitimacy of it. Now you guys came out, and even when January 6th happened, remember Ted Cruz was like objecting in the middle of it. We object, and we got one guy in the Senate. We're gonna have one guy in the, let's just pause and can't do it. Couldn't even have the debate. So the process that we wanted to go into could never happen because January 6th ruined it. The conspiracy, they write, which is all been proven to be true, most of it, involves subjects from the private sector in numerous battleground states, okay? Pennsylvania, where they want to win again, Michigan, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, New Mexico, and Arizona, the DOJ and the White House. They say, here's the background on this. Arctic Frost is a joint investigation between the FBI, the OIG, Post Office, National Archives. It was opened back in April 2022. They did all of the work, and then they gave it over to the special counsel, Jack Smith. And remember how they kept lying to us repeatedly about Jack Smith? They kept saying, oh no, Merrick Garland. Oh no, he's independent. No, he's special. He doesn't report to anybody. Oh, does he report to you? Well, kind of, right? Because he has to, but he was very coy about that. So they just were creating their propaganda, fake prosecution and handing it off to him so that he could provide cover for their partisan hackery. Now, here are the lines of efforts. Okay, this is what they're going to investigate in America. False fraud claims. If you are propagating false election fraud allegations, false according to them, or attempting to seize voting machines and ballots, false fraud claims. Now, that I think is an action. Like, okay, like if you're going to come in and break in and try to steal voting machines or something, that's a crime already. Did it happen? What does attempting to mean? What is that? You're going to charge them with an attempt crime? Go do it. But that's a crime. So what are you investigating? That's fine. But propagating false election fraud allegations, you're allowed to get on there and say, this is all rigged. This is my opinion. I think this is what actually happened. Allowed to do that. And you should not come under scrutiny by the FBI for this. False electors scheme. Scheme to have a false slate of electors or electoral college certificates submitted, and many attorneys were sued and local legislators were sued and charged with criminal charges, not just civilly sued. False lawsuits. If you file numerous unsubstantiated fraud lawsuits, then they're going to come investigate you. That's what the courts are for. If one party is filing overly litigious lawsuits, the courts manage that. You don't need the FBI to go investigate that. That's not a crime to file a bad lawsuit. The courts just say this is a bad lawsuit and get out of here. So this was all related to the 2020 presidential election. So state pressure. If you pressure state and local officials in battleground states to alter the outcome of the election, so you're allowed to put pressure on your public officials. That's America. That's the whole point. You can't do anything illegal, but you can send letters. You can make, peaceful phone calls that are non-threatening. That's the point of engaging. Will you guys investigate this? Please get off your butts and do something and look into why the courts, your state legislature, how come the courts took your power away from you under the guise of COVID? We have to change the election dates. We need more ballot drop boxes. More people can vote by mail. We're going to move all of the deadlines back, and signature requirements can be waived or lightened up, all because of COVID. Courts don't have that power. Elections are scheduled by the legislature and managed by them. So how come that was being usurped? Can legislatures not have pressure from their constituents to go investigate these things? Obviously they can. But our corrupt FBI was corrupt. Now, false DOJ letter, and they're coming after Jeffrey Clark. An effort to have the DOJ send a letter falsely representing the DOJ had identified significant concerns related to this. It may have impacted the outcome. Now, additionally, an effort to install Clark as acting attorney general so that he could send the factually inaccurate letter. Again, our facts are better than your facts. You can already litigate this in the courts, which is where a lot of it was being litigated. And the president had the power to make those changes. And so he can do that without scrutiny from the FBI. It's literally in the Constitution. He can make these changes and do these things, but they're going to investigate everybody for that. Pressure Pence and Eastman. Any attempt to pressure Mike Pence to reject legitimately cast votes of electors, I guess, is you can't communicate with another elected official called Mike Pence because Mike Pence is such a victim. He can't stand the pressure. We need the FBI to come in and investigate these. Also, allegations of false, misleading representation to raise money post-election. So if you just continue to say, if these guys were here, man, we would all be in gulags, okay? Because they would have come after us again, which they did the first time. Not criminally, but they silenced us as best they could. Allegations of false or misleading representation to raise money. So if you're running again and you say, hey, we have questions about the 2020 election, please donate to my campaign. The answer is you're a borderline criminal and you're going to come under FBI scrutiny. It's ridiculous. So here's what they did. Okay, this is the full pressure and the full weight of the government. So anytime they're coming out and they're like, you guys are canceling people. You canceled Jimmy Kimmel. Are you kidding me? First of all, the market did that. Disney did that. Go talk to Bob Iger if you're so upset about it. Don't scream about Donald Trump. But now they unleashed the entire whole of the government. They conducted over 150 interviews, just pressuring these people, man. You get the FBI showing up at your doorstep. It's not a good day. More than 50 additional interviews in the next 60 days. So they're just ramping this up because the election's right around the corner. They served over 400 subpoenas, 300 for witness testimony records, 200 selectors, and 20 financial subpoenas. And I am hoping that the Trump administration is playing with these same tactics. Go for it. And we have actual legitimacy. Okay, these people were engaged in conversations about an election, and they used January 6th as the violent pretext to go to unleash hell on one half of the country for the next 4 years. And how much damage was occurring on January 6th, according to the insurance and the property damages? About $2.7 million. And how much damage was impacted from the BLM Summer of Love from 2020 that Kamala Harris was endorsing and saying people should get out of custody, raising money so that the people who were arrested can get out and continue to do it? How much was that? $1 to $2 billion with a B, okay? An order of magnitude different. And they do 150 interviews with those felons? No. They wanted to wage war on one side of the government, and they did that. So significant other investigative steps. They're also going after Mark Esper, and it costs money, man. You got to defend yourself. You got to get lawyers. There's an opportunity cost. Mark Meadows. Everybody gets sidelined, okay? So they can't play because they've got FBI investigations now. So the best players are taken off the field. And here's what they're going to charge people with. Yeah, attempt to obstruct an official proceeding. So the 1512C charges, which are illegal. False statements. What a joke. You're going to charge somebody with false statements for sharing an opinion about the election that you, the FBI, helped to rig. And also conspiracy to defraud the United States and wire fraud. So this is who they went after. These people are such maniacs. Here, everybody. Banks, all the financial cases, and here's who they're looking for. So on this left column, you can see these are all going to be the banks. JP Morgan, National Bank, Chase Bank, all the things, but who owns the accounts is really what's more important. And here's what you can see. Save America PAC. We've got guys like Sarabian Belmont. You got Mitchell Meadows over here. And just a bunch of names. You can see a lot of them. The big one, of course, this guy, Clark Pasatino, I believe that may have been Clavicle Girl's lawyer. Obstruction for what? Representing his clients? So it continues. Citizens United, Conservative Partnership Institutes. What are they investigating them for? Bogus investigations. That's their justification. They're looking into election fraud. They're not allowed to do that. They want credit reports. They want misappropriation from Brad Parscale. He was very effective with Facebook and the social media stuff in the first election, 2016, if you recall. So they went after him all over the place, all of his companies, just to make his life hell because he beat them. They're so mad at him. They have to stop him now. All these Trump entities for misappropriation, okay, whatever that is. And then, of course, Charlie Kirk, Turning Point USA or Turning Point Action and everybody else. And it looks like they're coming after them for J6 money, right? January 6 money, evidently. So everybody, and it's not just Charlie. Look, it's Women for America, Blue Bonnet, Make America Great Again, Trump Make America, all of them for just moving money around, for Venmoing somebody something to stop everybody. Sidney Powell, a lawyer, got hit. All the Trump victory funds, all for wire fraud. More Pascal. RNC's on the list. Clarkman, Eastman, Rudy Giuliani, their companies. And look, all these complete. We're going after scraping through their financial records, scraping through their lives so that we can try to find crimes for them. And they did. They charged many of them with crimes. And who knows how much of this they passed over to Big Fannie Willis or what went over to the New York attorney's office, Letitia, ridiculous. It was like a full-blown scraping of everything they could get while they were in power, okay, because they're partisan monster maniacs. Now, Chuck Grassley, he also releases more. He says, we also have Navarro. Remember, Peter Navarro was arrested on a tarmac at an airport, and I think in a tube at an airport, says they also, in a court document filed by the DOJ, these lying FBI agents, they said that Navarro was combative when they served a subpoena to him. And then that initial interaction, so they come, they say, hey, we've got a subpoena for you. And during the delivery of the subpoena, Navarro was combative. We're going to listen to the audio right now, and you can see whether you think Navarro was combative. So they say, well, our first interaction with with him was problematic. And basically anything's, usually combative for the FBI. If like somebody opens a window and there's a strong breeze and like, oh, I'm a little cold. I'm under attack because you're an FBI agent, because you're pathetic. So similar thing, he's combative, right? And then the interaction with Navarro, that was the pretext to arrest him on the tarmac. The dude's like in his 70s and like he's going to be a dangerous, violent person. So they put him in handcuffs in an airport when his lawyers would have just walked him in there. That interaction with Navarro was used as justification to arrest him. Then we got the Durham and the Clinton annex. They show that the FBI was rigging everything. We got 2 additional documents, and they're also releasing more documents about the Biden crime family. Now, all in all, the whistleblowers have been doing great work, and so thank you, Cash, for helping settle deals with them. Now, here was the audio from Peter Navarro, and I have this queued up. About the first 3 minutes are these feds bumbling around with their microphone, probably, packing up their donuts and getting out of the car. It takes them 2 minutes to get out. Then they come up, and here's what they sound like.
Sir, I just want to make sure you know you're speaking to an FBI agent. Can you see my credentials? They're held up to the peephole.
Just tell me what this is about.
Okay, sir. Myself and my partner here, Sebastian Gardner, we're 2 special agents of the FBI. We're investigating some matters relating to the January 6th Select Committee. I wonder if you... No, sir, we don't have a warrant. We do have a subpoena for you. I was wondering if you had a minute to speak with us.
No.
Okay, I have a grand jury subpoena, sir, for you to produce some records. Do you want to open the door, or you just want me to leave it out here?
Leave it out there.
All right, sir, it's right here on your front step. You've been served with a subpoena. Please, got my contact information in there. Please let me know if you have any questions. Can you go back to your room, sir? Oh, you live in this one? Okay, go.
Okay, did you hear anything combative in there? It's like a minute long. They walk up, knock on the door. You can hear Peter Navarro on the inside saying, what's this about? I'm an FBI agent. Okay, what's this about? Well, I just want you to know I'm an FBI agent because I'm super strong and powerful. Look at my credentials. Look how cool I am. I'm serving subpoenas for Benny Thompson and Liz Cheney, 2 illegally constituted leaders of an illegal committee called the J6 Select Committee, which didn't even follow their own rules. HR 503 said it needed to have a certain amount of members. I think it was 13, 8 from the majority, 5 from the Republicans. And they didn't do that. They just cut it down to 9. And then Nancy Pelosi appointed the 2 Republicans, so-called, to make it a bipartisan committee. The whole thing was a hack job. And it wasn't even following their own House rules. They sued in court to say they make them follow their rules. And the court said, we can't do it. It's Congress. They can do whatever they want because it's a separation of powers issue. And so they did. They did whatever they wanted. They had total power. They rigged the entire thing. They had a propaganda, 8-set series that was pathetic, that was all engineered by, ABC news producers or, documentary producers or something like that. It was not anything other than a set of show trials. And then they arrested Peter Navarro, put him in shackles outside the airport because he just said, leave the subpoena on the front door. No, you're not coming in. You have a warrant? Peter says, no. Okay, go. It's like perfect interaction. They said that was combative. They went back to their car, both those agents, like, can you believe he treated us like that? We're FBI agents. He should show some respect. Peter Navarro was combative at me. Get some gonads. For crying out loud, you FBI agents, so pathetic. Actually, we know what they're doing. It's just a pretext because they wanted to humiliate him outside of the airport and turn it into a media spectacle. President Trump also commented about this, says, why was the wonderful turning point under investigation by deranged Jack Smith and the corrupt and incompetent Biden administration? They tried to force Charlie and many other people and movements out of business. They weaponized the Justice Department against sleepy Joe Biden's political opponents, including me, the president. They allowed the daughter of a judge, Judge Merchan, Juan the Khan, to run one of the most corrupt trials against me, to become the biggest fundraiser for Biden and Kamala. Remember his hack daughter was working with that Democrat fundraising operation? Like, no, it's not a conflict of interest. No. But my daughter was writing Facebook ads that were about her daddy's indictment and arraignment of President Trump, raising funds for pencil neck Adam Schiff. Remember? They allowed the daughter of her to make money. Daddy was indicting Trump, daughter's raising Democrat funds off of it. Sick. Making many millions of dollars for herself and her family. But with her father, the judge, not only refusing to recuse himself, but also putting a gag order on me, not allowing anyone to talk about his lib hack daughter, about their family corruption and unprecedented conflict of interest. This is, judicial due process. How much due process did Trump get in any of these trials? None. Every leading legal analyst and pundit said this trial was wrong and should not have been allowed to go forward with a clearly conflicted judge, but it did because of a corrupt judge, Judge Juan the Con Mercan, acting judge from New York, will hopefully pay a very big price for his illegal actions someday. We sure hope so. Now, Peter Navarro was happy about this. He came on and he says, yeah, very nice to see some of the truth come out, that I was not combative at all, and that these FBI agents are just bona fide liars.
Peter, the way you were treated is just shameful. He also released a tape of the conversation that you had when they showed up at your door with the subpoena. What's your reaction to all of this?
Well, I want to thank Senator Chuck Grassley and his staff for getting to the bottom of the weaponization of our government. Certainly, what's been uncovered about me just puts an underscore of the fact that I was a political prisoner. Everybody involved in my imprisonment was a Democrat. Everyone involved. And Chuck Grassley's uncovering it. But more importantly, I was just part of a broader pastiche, if you will, of the worst political attack on our presidency in the history of this country. If you look at the FBI agent Giardina, who put me in leg irons and exulted when I was indicted, that man was part of just about everything from the Steele dossier and Crossfire Hurricane to the Mueller report to Arctic Frost to Operation Crimson River. All of these were efforts. They were an insurrection. They were designed to get President Trump out of office when he was in. They were election interference. They were designed to stop him from being elected. And I'll tell you this is the age of accountability, okay? If we don't hold these people accountable, they'll do it again. Can you imagine Adam Schiff as the majority leader of the Senate or Cory Booker as the majority leader of the House after that spectacle we watched with
Pencil neck Schiff thought he was going to be the CIA director if Hillary won. Could you imagine how doomed we would be?
Kash Patel? These people, they have no conscience. And Schiff himself, again, he lied to Congress. He was part of the hoax
censured too
that he pushed. That guy should be investigated. And if we don't do this, Maria, if we don't hold these people accountable, if we don't hold them accountable, they're just going to keep doing it again. And that's why I'm talking about, continue to talk about my imprisonment. As you know, I went to prison so you won't have to. It's a book I wrote, and it's just a warning, Maria. It's a warning to everybody in America that if they can come for me and Donald Trump, put Steve Bannon in prison, bankrupt Rudy Giuliani, take away the law cards of Jeff Clark and John Eastman, and kill Charlie Kirk, and try to kill President Trump twice.
Unbelievable.
There's got to be accountability, because they're just going to keep doing it
Peter,
again.
you're right.
Shout out to Peter, man, and that's a very nice statement. He shouted out Jeff Clark, who's also been through the ringer, and he said, you know, he was kind enough to show and to point out that I was also targeted, Jeff Clark, by Operation Arctic Frost. He also defends John Eastman, also put through the ringer, and spotlights the assassination of Kirk and almost attempted of Trump. He ties it all together, and it was a very nice statement, and he's exactly right about this. It's kind of basic, you know, cause and effect. If you can continue to wage war on your political opponents, and there's no effect on that when you get caught or from the other side, then the other side's going to lose. So hopefully the Republicans now, you know, and the FBI, I don't know what Kash is doing. Hopefully they've got a bunch of Excel files open right now, man, and they're just filling out line after line with all of the big money that's flowing into the NGOs who helped invade our country over the last 4 years, all of the funding that's going to the domestic terror groups called Antifa, and the entire cabal of the lawyers who are funding and funneling money into the other corrupt entities like the courts and the prosecutors. And if they're going to prosecute people for filing false claims and fictitious claims or overly litigious complaints, thank you for that precedent. We'll be very happy to use it against you.